Shawna and Jody here with Real Sisters, Real Talk.
We're glad to have you joining us as we talk about growing in our faith with God.
Hello and welcome back to Real Sisters, Real Talk. I'm Jody and here with my sister Shawna. We're excited to be back with you today. Shawna, wanted to tell you a story as we start out. It just seems like it's been really, really busy lately, and we haven't had time kind of as a family, and so we had the kids over for dinner, like I don't know, week and a half ago, and just so that we could just connect and even kind of make a plan for the spring and summer because it was just so busy, and so we had dinner together, and Faye was playing on the floor, and Johnny, who she calls Paka, because that's a Dutch for grandpa, was sitting on the floor with her. And so she was just doing her thing and playing. And all of a sudden, she took this like ring and put her hand through it, and then like a bracelet, and then tried to take it off, and her hand got stuck. And she could not get her hand out. And you should have seen the panic on her face as she realized she was stuck.
Oh no.
And she immediately ran to Paka with this like panic look on her face and her arm up. And he just calmly took her hand and he turned it and he took her hand out and she was free immediately. He was completely calm the whole time. And she immediately calmed down and realized she was going to be okay. And she just went back to playing like it had never even happened. And I just thought, what a visual of here. She thought she was going to be stuck in this toy forever. She couldn't get her hand out. And yet Paka had it all under control. It was okay. There was nothing to worry about. And when she realized she was stuck, she ran to him, like knowing, Paka, you can fix this. And I just thought, what a visual for us in our walk with the Lord of there are so many, and it's what we want to talk about today. Like there are so many scenarios in life where we can feel stuck. And there's that panic feeling like, I don't know a way out here. But who do we run to? What do we do when we feel stuck? And kind of what situations make us feel stuck, right?
Yeah, I think that, my heart goes out to Faye because that's got to be just like, that is the worst feeling when we know how to do what we know how to do. But when you've done what you know how to do and it doesn't seem to be moving the situation forward, how do we get out of that? How do we get unstuck? And I think, for Faye, her example of her going to Paka is a great example of like, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. Like she first tried to pull it off of herself. She could have kept pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and not twisted her arm and not like changed the trajectory or done anything differently, just kept applying more pressure. And she would have just gotten more frustrated and maybe even like swelled up a little bit and got herself even more stuck if she had kept doing the same thing. And so I think one of the things that's important when we feel stuck is like, it's the calm that, Paka met her with, that Johnny met her with, the calm of, okay, what can we do differently in this situation? And it may sound like 101, but I think it isn't always our first choice.
Yeah, I think sometimes we keep repeating the same pattern, thinking that it's going to have a different result instead of taking that step back and looking at what can we do different.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to this is kind of a part of my personality that kind of I get stung by sometimes. I'll put it that way. I always think it's going to get better. I have a mentality that says, hang in there. This thing's going to turn. It's going to get better. And sometimes that keeps me stuck because I think that if I'm just patient, if I keep doing the right thing, that the ship will turn and things will be different. And so I'm a bit of a plotter, not much flashy here, just kind of like keep moving in the right direction. And that isn't always the solution. Sometimes you need to do something different.
Yeah. So let's get some like practical scenarios of examples of what that might look like because I agree. I think there's a lot of times too where I think um be patient, stay steadfast, that
Hmm.
sometimes can feel like the right path. But we can't just keep repeating that and think that when it's not changing to think that it's going to change. So like if there are different ways that we might feel stuck. And so I'm thinking one that probably a lot of people feel at different seasons of their life, they might feel stuck in a job. I need the income. I have no other option. There are no other jobs, lined up to ask me to come on
Right? People
over.
aren't knocking down
Uh,
my door.
right. So I'm stuck in the place where I am. I actually felt that many, 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 many years ago, way before I worked at Emmanuel. I'm just going to state that really clearly. I love my job. But I do remember feeling stuck in a job. I didn't have the greatest boss at that time. And but we needed the income.
Mm.
And so there were things that I was tolerating because I felt stuck. I felt like I didn't have other options. And one of the things like in that scenario, in that season of my life, when I look back, I think, I honestly was trying to, in my own strength, my own wisdom, my own ability, figure out the way to get unstuck. So I
Mm.
was pulling and pulling and pulling and
Right.
pulling on that thing instead of going to the Lord and saying, okay, how are you at work here? What is your plan? What am I not seeing that you would like me to open my eyes and see, Lord? Would you
Mm.
show me if I'm supposed to take a step, even if it's scary? Would you show me what step I'm supposed to take, Lord? Um, I think that season could have been shorter for me,
Hmm.
right?
If you had been open to the something different. I
Right.
think that about a lot. I think that about a lot of things in my life, that the hard times that I've gone through could have been shorter had I been more assertive, had I been more, I mean, I think, to be totally honest with you, um, some of my beliefs about, what it means or what it looks like to be a Christian woman have allowed me to be in situations that were not good for me for a long period of time, because I thought, you know what, if I'm just kind, if I'm just gracious. Let me just give you a vague example. Someone not treating me well in the workplace, and specifically talking about being stuck in a job. And, you know, just, I even brought it forward to that person and just said, you know, to make you aware, this makes me feel uncomfortable, or this is not a good situation for the workplace. I don't find this to be appropriate for the workplace, or whatever the case may be. And it was always like, oh, you know, you know, we don't mean anything by that. And I just continue to offer grace time and time again. And I felt like I was doing the godly thing. I felt like I was doing the the patient thing, the turn the other cheek kind of thing. But it was definitely having an impact on how I felt about going into work, how I felt about my circumstances, how I felt about myself. You start to believe, when you get treated a certain way for a certain period of time, you start to believe that how you're being treated or how you're being viewed is true
Hmm.
about you. And I'm not saying that we aren't supposed to turn the other cheek, and I'm not saying that, just bite your tongue and let yourself be in an unhealthy situation. That's not what I'm saying at all. There's just a real discernment that has to come through walking that out with the Lord, and walking it out with wise counsel, like opening up about the places that you feel stuck, with someone, saying it out loud, and that can be so scary, but saying it out loud to someone else. I know very specifically, I went to someone, a friend of mine who's retired, who was very high up in, the marketplace in his time of working, and just said, I know that you were a high level leader in a large company and had a lot of people underneath you, and this is kind of what I'm dealing with. How would you recommend that I deal with it? And he had incredible godly, fatherly wisdom to impart to me about how to handle the situation. And that was super helpful at getting unstuck.
I love that. That's such a great example. So that example is you, just to kind of reiterate the underlying reasoning, you felt like you were doing the godly thing. You were doing it the right way. You were, um, honoring God in this process and being kind and loving and all of those things. I think another thing that can drive us staying stuck is fear.
Mm.
Just fear of change, fear of hurting somebody,
Fear of getting
fear of a
fired.
broken fear of getting fired, yeah, fear of a broken relationship, fear, like, whatever, fear of what other people might think.
Fear of even just like the confrontation.
Oh, for
I
sure.
don't like those kinds of conversations. Like, I would much rather be nice and keep the peace than go toe to toe and, yeah, just have the difficult conversations. I've had to grow a lot in that area.
Yeah. And so another thing I just think, I mean, in every scenario of being stuck, and we can give some more of those kind of, um, scenarios, but I also think that in each scenario of being stuck, the enemy wants us to believe that are no other options. Like, you are stuck. You will always be stuck. This
That's,
is
yeah.
just part of your life, right?
Hmm.
And that is whatever it is that you're facing right now where you feel stuck, that's a lie. That is a lie. God is at work.
Yes, come
And
on.
God can move mountains, right? And so we're not stuck. And the other thing I think we need to realize, and even in a, when we're feeling stuck, when change starts to come, it doesn't mean that it's going to be like, the Red Sea is parted, and within seconds we're able to walk across on dry ground. Sometimes there's just a small shift and a small shift and a small
Hmm.
shift, but we have to pay attention to where their movement is, um, and how to continue to walk in that movement, that
Yeah.
shift, that change.
I think sometimes, we do need to remember, Jodes, that God is moving, and sometimes He wants to move us. I think about when my kids were little, they when they were babies, and they would, before they would take on a new milestone, let's say, before they learned to roll over, let's just start with that one. There was a season of, like, crabby. Like, I am not happy on my back for the love. I want something different. And the discontent was, came across as crying, and it was very obvious that they weren't happy with their situation, but it was the discontent that led them to do something different, that opened up this new skill of, oh, look at me. If I, throw my legs over to the side and shift my weight hard and roll and put my arm down, I can roll over. And I saw that with every single one, like before they started crawling, before they started walking, all the things, there was a level of discontent with how things were before they figured out, I need to do something different here.
Okay, so then I love that analogy, because then we, instead of saying I'm stuck, maybe we say I'm feeling discontent. What
Hmm.
needs to happen for that, for for a change to take place? Like, even just to recognize, because I think we need to recognize what causes movement. A lot of times when I'm mentoring people, and I say this because I have experienced it over and over in my life, in my walk with the Lord. There are times when I feel like there is a great I'm in a season where God has my attention. I often say I feel like I'm walking through muddy water. Everything's confusing. Nothing quite makes sense. I know that God is doing something, but I don't have any clarity to what it is. And so the walking through dirty water, or I feel like I'm hitting my head on a ceiling,
Hmm.
and I just can't get my head any higher. I'm hitting the ceiling. I don't know what else to do. And then all of a sudden there's a breakthrough, and you get to the other side and you're like, "Oh, Lord, I see what you were teaching me. I can see the other side now. And then we'll get to another one and another one and another one. And that's a beautiful thing. But it's that we first have to get to that place of discontent, feeling stuck before there can be the discovery of something
new.
new. Yeah.
Even shifting the way that you see it, like you were saying, Jodes, to see it like when a baby is laying on their back, just imagine, they're laying on their back, they're discontent, and, they're having this little conversation with themselves. I'm just going to be on my back forever. I'm just going to lay on my back. That's obviously not true. You're just growing. You're just learning something new. You're on the verge of a new milestone. If we could shift from I'm stuck to I'm learning. I'm in the process of wrestling some stuff out, but I'm growing, and give ourselves grace for the growing instead of the I'm stuck.
Yeah. Okay. So going with the same illustration, since we're kind of having fun with this. So this baby is stuck on the back, rolls over, woohoo, got myself to my stomach. Hold on a minute. I don't really like this. I don't know how to get back. I don't know. I'm getting tired of holding my head up. This is kind of exhausting.
It hurts my back a little.
I'm not
arching my back here. I'd kind of like to be back on my back again.
Right?
I can't see the ceiling fan anymore. That was crazy fun. This is just not working.
So sometimes when we get unstuck or we make some movement, it's uncomfortable. And we immediately might think, I want to go back. Like I even think when you were sharing the illustration of rolling over, I was thinking about crawling. When I watched Faye crawl, she learned how to crawl and then she got really fast at crawling. And then when she started to walk, it slowed her down. And so often she would drop down to a crawl because if she wanted to get someplace fast, crawling could get her there faster.
The familiar
and so
way.
she would go back. Yes, she'd go back to what she knew because it was harder to walk. And until walking became easier, but the more she practiced, the easier it became. And isn't that a visual for us in our life? Like, yeah, sometimes a change is painful. Sometimes it slows us down.
Slows us down. Yeah. That's so good.
But it doesn't mean it's bad. It's like we need you to walk. We need you to take that next step.
It's part of growing. I think too, I love this whole, I wasn't planning on using this whole, baby analogy, but it's really working because I also think too that all of the baby things are things that the baby did. And I think a lot of times when we feel stuck, we're like, God, do something for the love. Like, God, change my circumstance. God, do something, instead of recognizing that there's a role for us to play in getting unstuck. And you had brought up the story about the Israelites, Jodes, and, Moses leading the Israelites. And so he gets them out of slavery, right, from Egypt, and they're headed to the promised land. And they come upon the Red Sea. And then Pharaoh had a change of heart as far as letting them go. And so him and his army are coming after them. So come on, they're stuck. There's a body of water in front of them, and there's an army charging after them, and they're literally stuck. And one of the things that I love about this story, one of my favorite verses of the story is the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground." So it wasn't that Moses was standing there freaking out, looking at the army coming after him, and then looking at the water, and then looking at the army, and then looking at the water. No. God gave him a job to do. The water didn't just part all on its own. He cried out to God, and God, I'm going to kind of paraphrase this. God was like, "Why are you crying out to me? Raise your staff, brother." Like, do you know what I mean? There's a role, there's something for you to do here. And now for Moses to raise his staff and stick it in the water does not mean the water is going to part. That's a God thing. Only God can do that. But Moses was given instructions by the Lord. I want you to raise your staff. That's your job. And I think sometimes we're just waiting on the water to part without picking up our staff and raising our staff and doing our part.
Yeah. So an illustration I use for that a lot, that just is such a visual for me. I guess it breaks it down and makes it so like practical for me. But if I prayed and asked God for a garden, Lord, I want a vegetable garden. I would like a vegetable garden. That would be lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all. I just sat on the couch
Mm-hmm.
and waited for God to put my garden out there. It's not going to grow, more than likely. I mean, I'm going to say 99.9%. It's
Right.
not going to grow. But if I say, God, I would love a vegetable garden. I would love to be able to share vegetables with my neighbors, and what a beautiful thing that would be.
Farm to
And I
table
got out
meals.
there.
Yeah.
Woo, I love it, right? And so then I have to go out and I have to bring my shovel and I
Mm-hmm.
have to plant some seeds and I have to prep the soil and I have to weed the garden. I have to do something. So it's kind of like what
Mm-hmm.
you're saying. Moses had to put the staff out. Sometimes we have to put it in motion instead of just saying, God, I don't like my job. God, give me a
Mm-hmm.
new job. Like, do something.
Mm-hmm.
Put and I think sometimes it's a matter of doing what's right in front of us. But I'm going to just clarify this. In communication with the Lord, asking him what steps to take.
Right.
Don't go out and don't go rogue. Don't go
Right.
rogue. Like, we want to be consulting with the Lord in how we're supposed to move forward,
Hmm.
and carefully.
Yeah, that makes me think of I think another stuck story in the Bible, and it's Hagar. So
Mm.
I'm not going to go into her whole story, but she was abused. She was mistreated. Um, she was out in the desert with her son, and she thought that they were going to die. Well, actually, there were two different scenarios. One time she left, and she was like, she ran away, and she was like, God, this is not right, and this is my situation, and God sent her back. I don't like that one very much. He sent her back to that place and she obeyed. But this second time, she's sitting in the wilderness and she thinks her son's going to die and she can't even take it. And so she puts him, a ways away under a tree, and she's just like ready to accept her fate when God opened up her eyes and she saw a well. And so I think, like you said, Joe, it's like being in conversation with the Lord and saying, God, I feel so stuck. I can't see a way out. Open up my eyes. Show me what I'm not seeing, because the well was there. God didn't like miraculously drop a well. Like it says in the scripture that he opened up her eyes and then she was able to see the well. So he opened up her eyes to the resources that were there that she wasn't seeing beforehand.
Right. I love that story and I love that visual because when we feel stuck, it is hard to see what is even available in front of us. But God can open our eyes when we ask him for help. And so that's a perfect illustration of that. There are so many stories of stuck in the Bible. I mean, you and I both love the story of Joseph,
Yep.
but talk about feeling stuck. Can you imagine stuck in a hole, stuck in as a slave, stuck in prison, um, forgotten, and all of that. And all of that was we just ended up we're in our Women of the Word, we're just finishing up Genesis, just finished it up. And to see that those years, those 17, I think it was 17 years in captivity, or 13 years in captivity before he went into Pharaoh's house, were spent in preparation of learning administration, things that he
Right.
wouldn't have learned at home under dad's, gentle
Mm-hmm.
arm,
Right.
but the things that he learned that so that he could take the role that he was going to take in Pharaoh's household. He was stuck for a
I'm
long time, but
yeah,
God had a plan.
I'm sure he felt incredibly stuck, but like you said, Jodes, that was all prerequisite for a huge task that the Lord had for him to just save many lives, save an entire nation. But yeah, it was like administrative, stewardship, leadership. There were all these skills and I think, God could have imparted that all to him,
Yeah.
right? Like, and so I think a lot of times that's what I want. I want the impartation. I want I want to learn Spanish. So I would love to just, Lord, I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to sleep. And if while I'm sleeping, you can just give me a download of Spanish. I would love to learn Spanish and then just go to sleep and wake up and think I'm going to be fluent in 2 languages. It's like, there's Rosetta Stone, there's, community college, there's online courses, there's all kinds of ways that you can learn the language, but we just kind of want the impartation. Let's bypass all that stuff and just go with the quick fix.
Of course, we want to hit the easy button. And you know what? I think also in Joseph's story, we see that he walked faithfully
Mm-hmm.
in those positions.
Yeah,
When
in
he was in
darkness.
Potiphar's house, oh yeah, he was faithful. He walked upright. He did it right. And then in jail, they put him in charge of the other prisoners because he did it right. He walked with integrity. And so you also see it's not like Joseph was stuck. He did nothing for 13 years. That is not his story.
Mm-hmm.
That's not his story. He was leaning in. He was trusting God. He was faithful. And so I think even if we're feeling stuck right now, we need to walk in faithfulness, truth in what we are, where we are at, and then also pray and ask God.
Yeah.
I want to just give a couple scenarios where we might feel stuck. So we might feel stuck in our relationship with the Lord. That can
Mm-hmm.
be an area we might feel stuck in a relationship here on earth. Um, and that's a very real thing. We might feel stuck in and with a diagnosis
Mm-hmm.
that we don't want,
Or
right?
in a body that isn't, do you know what I mean? That a
Yeah.
body that doesn't function the way that we had thought it would or hoped it would.
Yeah. We might feel mentally stuck in a way of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
or something we believe about ourselves. I just think there's so many different. We might feel stuck financially. There's so many different ways that we can feel stuck, and it's real. We just want to name that, like that's real stuff.
It is real stuff. But I also think that there is, and this is not, when I say but, that discounts everything that happened before. Don't discount the whole podcast because Shawna said but. I do think too we can slip into a victim mentality that isn't helpful and that isn't true. We have agency to be able to do things differently. We have the same power that raised Jesus from the grave living inside of us. We have the wisdom of all eternity counseling us. We have the comforter letting us know that even when we're going through the hardest things, we're not alone in it. The victim mentality does not, if anything, it only helps us to stay in our stuckness. It doesn't help us to move forward.
Exactly. And I know that sounds easy, and it's difficult, but it's worth the effort. We want to walk in the way that God is calling us to walk. We want to walk in freedom.
And honestly, if that sounded harsh, or if you're not sure that you believe what I just said, you're just not sure, I would ask you to don't believe me. Sit with the Lord and
Yeah.
ask him, is this true about me? Am I truly stuck? Is my situation irreversible? Is there no way out? Or what do you see when you look at me? Do you see a victim? Um, what would you have me do? Like, open up the conversation with the Lord and talk with him about what he wants you to believe, what he wants you to know, what he wants you to see, what Hagar, the resources, the well, um, and how he would lead you out of what feels like so stuck right now.
Yeah. Because along with that, Hagar story is she names God the God who sees me.
Mm-hmm.
He does see you. No matter what situation you're in right now, God sees you. He loves you. He delights in you, and he sees you. And that's important to know.
Man, this is like the fastest half hour of the week. It just goes so quick. But it's good to be with you. And, when we're done, like filming this podcast here, I'm just going to I'm just going to hop off. Actually, I'm going to do it right now. I'm just going to pray for you. I'm going to pray for us. Lord, we love you so much, and we trust you, and we know that you see us. You are the God who sees us and knows all things. God, I am asking right now, in the areas of our life where we feel stuck, I am asking that you would reveal the truth, that you would speak to our hearts, that we would feel a measure of peace just in the reality that you are right here, right now with us, fully aware of the circumstances that we're in. And I'm asking, Lord, that you would show us what's next, that you would show us the way out, that you would show us resources we can't see, that you would show us truths that you want us to believe, and that we would grab onto and stand on everything that you say. God, give us the power and the strength to move into what you have for us next. We love you and we trust you. In Jesus' name. We serve a real God, and he really loves you.